How's it going, folks? This is Acid Roots. I'm going to review Post Malone's most recent project, Hollywood's Bleeding. Now, the thing about this project is it came off of massive success that Post Malone had back in 2018 with Beer Bongs and Bentleys, songs like Rockstar, Psycho, which both hit number one. Then you had Better Now, Ball for Me, Candy Paint. So there were several. I mean, he was pretty ubiquitous back in 2018. But then on top of that, he had some leftover songs that charted from Stoney, which came out in late 2016. So this was basically Post Malone time for most of that time period. And after like the subsequent buzz from beer bongs and Bentleys kind of wore off, at like the tail end of 2018, Post Malone dropped two singles called Sunflower and then Wow. And he basically took the rest of 2019 by storm with this project, which is Hollywood's Bleeding. Now, Post Malone tries a lot of different things, and a lot of them he actually pulls off, and that's kind of the thing. There's some new tricks. He's not a one-trick pony. He does rehash some things, but it's excellent additions, and they're not stale or bland or anything like that. But there are some complaints about this project, and I don't feel like it's as good as Beer Bongs and Bentleys. Now, it's definitely more widespread. I mean, you're going to find things like Ozzy Osbourne on here, songs like Circles that just feel like massive pop songs, songs like Wow that are massive club songs like Goodbyes that are massive relationship songs. So there's a lot of stuff that Post Malone tried to do, but somehow, as I'll explain later on, it didn't quite have the effectiveness and just overall festiveness that Beer Bongs and Bentley had. So it's close. I mean, it's between this one or Beer Bongs as far as which one's actually better, but I still would have to say I'm going to have to go with this 2018 project. But I need to sneeze. I kind of need to sneeze. It's probably just going to. So basically, yeah, Post Malone, he's had a number of hits, and he's basically like the radio's poster child at this stage. He's only 25 right now, and he's hit number one as many times as like people who it takes like 12 or 13 years to hit that as many times. So he has easily several top 5, top 10 songs off of all three of his albums, and that kind of goes to show this one is probably the bigger cash cow. And I said Beer Bongs and Bentleys is the better album. This one is probably the more commercially successful just because it has so many hits. I mean, it made it to the 6th single in addition to a bonus 7th single with the song Sunflower. So we'll get to talking about some of those singles. So Wow was the first single that came out, and that was dropped in 2018. And this is one of my favorite actual records on this project. It took me a while to kind of get into this record, but this is one of my favorites just because it's the most similar to the stuff he was doing on Beer Bongs and Bentleys. And it's a club song. It's just like Rockstar. It's a little bit shorter, doesn't have someone else to help him out, but it's a pretty solid club song, pretty solid pull-up song with your vehicle and that sort of stuff. It just is a pretty good show-out song, and it's probably about the most crunchy song that there is on this whole project in terms of contemporary. If you like contemporary hip hop and club oriented rap music, this is about the only pick that you really have. But then, even though this wasn't the second single, it dropped at the same time. So I'm just going to say that Sunflower is the second single. And Sunflower basically was on the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse soundtrack. This hit number one, and it was a pretty massive song. I mean, on Spotify, it has over 1 billion plays. So obviously, a lot of people liked it. And pretty good relationship song. Just another one of those songs that just kind of, I mean, it seems kind of simplistic, but I think that that's kind of the point. It's clever for what it was as far as like a radio song, and it's been like a staple across like the past 3 years now. So it has staying power, kind of like Circles, which I'm going to mention in a little bit. I mean, Circles and Sunflower are just two inescapable songs in this particular time period. So just understand that if you want to kind of know about songs of like recent times, Sunflower is a pretty good place to start. But then Goodbyes came out in the summer of 2019, just before this album came out. This is an excellent song. It's just like Better Now. It's kind of like a fusion of Better Now and Psycho, and it does it extremely well. I mean, when I used to talk about how Post Malone kind of reminded me of doing Walmart music, this is a typical kind of song that just feels like you're just cruising around, relaxing a bit, just not a care in the world, minus maybe the relationship that you're in, and it definitely has like excessively good skill with what it does. And Young Thug contributes to the song, so it's good. I mean, that's definitely the thing. I appreciated the song. It's like that's another Beer Bongs and Bentley kind of styled hit. Just the fact that it has like similarities and it deserved to chart as high as it did. And then Circles. So Circles was the biggest song that came out on this project. It was on the charts for the vast majority of 2020, despite being released as a single in summer of 2019, like August, September. So I mean, it's basically one of the larger songs, and it's another one that hit 1 billion plays on Spotify and just continued to kind of do things. Really large song. You've probably heard it on the radio, even if you don't know Post Malone, if you listen to radio like that sort of stuff. It's pretty inescapable. It's a great song, but it's not one of my favorites. I like Goodbyes and Wow more, but I would prefer this song on the radio to some of the other stuff that kind of goes on. So it's just kind of like, one of those club song or one of those pop songs that you heard 2008, something like that. Like, typical Katy Perry or Adele song. It's kind of like that's what Post Malone did back in 2020. And then Enemies was the only single out of the 7 singles that I didn't enjoy. I mean, it's a rhythmic song, basically meaning that it's just for up-tempo kind of stuff, supposed to be similar to songs like Wow. Basically, the follow-up, if you like Wow, this is another one in that field, but I didn't. That's the thing. I know DaBaby is pretty large and in charge at this point, but I didn't really feel the rhythm of the song, and to me it just wasn't that catchy compared to some of the other tricks that he pulled off. I mean, Wow, Goodbyes, Circles all had their distinct field and did them extremely well, but somehow the rhythmic radio, I felt like maybe the selection could have been better. But this is really like the only rhythmic single that I would have thought that could have been on Hollywood's Bleeding. So that really says that while he made an attempt, it wasn't as good of a strong point. And that's the thing. When you look at Stoney and you look at Beer Bongs and Bentleys, they did rhythmic singles extremely well. I mean, you look at songs like Candy Paint and Ball for Me and other songs from Stoney that I don't remember. I mean, Post Malone is normally pretty good at rhythmic, but he just didn't do it this time. Allergic went to alternative radio. That was the single after that, and I liked that one. I wasn't expecting Post Malone. These next 2 singles Post Malone did were more kind of in the rock and alternative kind of set. So it's kind of more for the emo and punk kind of crowd, especially with Ozzy Osbourne on one of these singles. And they're pretty good. I mean, I didn't like the rhythmic this time, but I did like these alternative rock songs. Allergic was like a real left field kind of hit that I didn't expect, and it worked. And then Take What You Want with Ozzy Osbourne and Travis Scott that just feels like a really creepy song. I mean, I like that it was released as a single in October because it fits for the fall, and it definitely was a pretty creepy song to hear on the radio back in the day. And by back in the day, I mean late 2019. But I think you might be able to still catch this song on the radio if you listen hard enough. But it definitely was a success. Maybe not as large as Circles and Goodbyes and Wow, but pretty much probably like the 4th strongest single that there was. I definitely feel like that, and it works. I mean, Ozzy is a real good fit, and Travis Scott, keeps up with Post Malone, and it's not like he can't keep up with them, but they all work. They fit into the song all extremely well. So that's kind of how that goes. And now to talk about the rest of the project. So that just kind of happens to be like the thing is looking at a bunch of these kind of singles and stuff and the rest of the radio or the rest of the songs on the project. And the whole thing about it is originally when I reviewed Beer Bongs and Bentleys back in September, I said that that just had large amounts of songs and large amounts of topics and interesting standpoints, and it kind of reminded me of All Eyes on Me, just with the widespread variety that you found. It's not quite like that this time. Post Malone feels more intent this time on establishing a number of songs for relationships, songs like Circles, songs like Sunflower, Goodbyes, Internet, Die for Me. Uh, Trying to think of what else. There's probably a couple other ones. There's just a number of songs. I would almost say Take What You Want seems like a relationship also. Thousand Bad Times. So there's a number of songs on here that are specifically geared for women, and it's more like that this time, but as a fault to the point of saying that some of the topics that are left over are not quite as interesting. There's no songs like Candy Paint or Sugar Wraith or something like that, and songs like Same Bitches that had YG and G-Eazy on there and that sort of stuff, just taking it from that kind of angle. I mean, some of the topics that are left just seem more subdued and kind of less like just more prolific and balmy. And that's just kind of the thing. When I look at it, like Enemies was a nice touch, but it somehow didn't quite have the same fit. And obviously there's no other songs like Wow, which there definitely could have used. Like, there were a handful of club songs off of Beer Bongs and Bentleys, like Rockstar and songs like that, Ball for Me and that sort of stuff. But it just feels like Post Malone kind of had his intent on just more personal things. And that's the kind of the situations. It just felt less interesting somehow. It's difficult to kind of say, but songs like Myself, I Know, Internet, I'm Gonna Be, just lack a certain degree of like compelling. They're just not quite as compelling this time. And so, seeing as I've seen Post Malone pull it off 3 times in all of his previous projects, he normally has interesting topics that just are completely open books that just automatically draw attention. It just feels kind of strange that one of the few things that he does interesting this time is just songs for relationships, which is kind of disappointing just because I would have expected this by the third album not only being a commercial highlight, but also like a critic highlight as well, just to be able to say that it just is completely enjoyable for everyone, because that's what Eminem and Drake did by the time they got to their third albums, and Tupac and some of those people. But it feels like Post Malone took like 3 steps forward, but maybe 2 steps back, which kind of made it feel like it wasn't quite, maybe 4 steps forward and 2 steps back. So it just didn't quite feel like such an overreaching success as it might have tried to. But just in terms of like album cuts that there actually are on here, I felt like the SZA song "Staring at the Sun" was a nice touch. And then "A Thousand Bad Times" reminded me of songs that he did back in the Beer Bongs days. And then I kind of liked the "Hollywood's Bleeding" title track. I mean, it was an interesting intro, but it felt kind of quick and brief and to the point, but it did have personality. And then plus Future and Halsey on "Die for Me" was an interesting blend of like his typical, like I say, Walmart kind of fare that he normally does. It just felt good. So I'm going to go ahead and list now like the 10 songs out of 17 that I enjoyed, and I'll let you see them. So Circles, Sunflower, Wow, Goodbyes, Take What You Want, A Thousand Bad Times, Staring at the Sun, Allergic, Die for Me, and Hollywood's Bleeding. Now, like I said, a lot of these, I mean, most of these, 6 out of 7 of these are the singles, and then there just was a lack of other album cuts really on here. But occasionally he makes good use of the guests. Like I felt like Future and Halsey did an extremely good job. SZA pulled something off. I liked the idea behind. Young Thug did really good on Goodbyes. That feels like a supersized Post Malone song. That's one of the best songs off this project is Goodbyes. Sunflower was a surprise hit, and even though it's kind of tame, it still is like inescapable. Ozzy Osbourne and Travis Scott really were a nice blend for Take What You Want. And Allergic was just a left field alternative rock song that pulled off extremely well. So that's just a lot of the stuff that goes on. it just feels like the sheer number of tricks that Post Malone did, even if he learned to nail singles a lot better, it feels like he lost a few original skills that he had somehow. And I've explained as to the reasons why behind that. This doesn't really feel like as much of a hip hop record. I mean, it has mostly hip hop artists on here, but there's not really any good beats. Like there's not like the production on here is not like I'm saying, oh, there's a Swizz Beats beat or a Timbaland beat or a Neptune's beat or a Dr. Dre beat or something like that. I mean, really, the production is not much to speak of, and I've noticed that with just about every Post Malone project. It's not really the instrumentals that you're here to pay attention to. I mean, mostly Post Malone does the singing, it's the topic that he talks about, and the melody, and occasionally the guests that happen to bolster this also. So it's just new tricks as far as what you get from Post Malone. That's what makes it so different. But it doesn't feel like a hip hop record, and some of the best songs on this project are just completely different in terms of how you may like them. So that's why it's different from like a rap album, but then at the same time you have to kind of pay attention just to how it just doesn't have like the same feel. So I mean, that's just kind of where it's at. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I would have liked for some hip hop. There is some fat that needs to be trimmed. Like, this probably didn't need to be 17 songs. I feel like Internet, Myself, I Know didn't need to be on the project. I'm Gonna Be was kind of awkward. And Sane Tropez was, I didn't have a taste for that one either. So I felt like maybe those could have been replaced with more hip hop oriented songs, kind of like it having a more kind of contemporary feel like he did on Beer Bongs and Bentleys, because that record just felt more fun. It just felt like, I mean, he definitely has the relationship songs down, but he lost some of his personality that he had on like August 26th and Beer Bongs. So this is kind of the thing. So, but me liking 10 out of 17 songs, I'm going to give this record a 6 out of 10. And I'll give this record like a 10 out of 10 in terms of social score, just because it did have 7 singles and a lot of them charted pretty high. So, I mean, Post Malone definitely wins in terms of the social score, which is how well this plays around your friends and your social circle and what they would think about it and how popular a topic it is. But 6 out of 10 regular score, I just would kind of have to say, I mean, it's decent, but Beer Bongs is better just because it's more contemporary, more jovial and stuff. And then August 26th is also underestimated. So I mean, if you're looking for more Post Malone, but you don't really want like the serious and sobering kind of stuff and just, serious relationship kind of stuff, I mean, August 26th is obviously a good take just because it has some real fun records and it handles it a lot better. And I mean, I don't feel like August 26th is the better record, but it definitely is more fun. So that's just that, I've reviewed everything now by Post Malone. That's kind of how I would rank things and just kind of be able to say that this is a necessary addition with Post Malone's stuff, but it's not the best of all 4 things he's done.